So in this lecture we're going to talk about dates and times, and it's very common to deal with dates and times in a web application. You might want to record somebody's birthday and that's a date. You might want to take a reservation for a certain time. You also probably want to know when someone posted something. If it's a discussion forum or a blog, you might want the date and time that it was posted. So we'll deal with, you'll probably deal with dates and times quite a bit if you work with PHP. So first we'll talk about how we can get the current time, and we'll talk about how we can create a time from a string or convert a string to a time. Then we'll talk about converting a time back to a string so you can display it in your HTML page. Then we'll finish up talking about relative dates. The first thing that we'll learn is how to get the current date and time. Very often you'll want to know what time someone created an account or made a purchase, so it's pretty important to be able to get the current date and time. So to do that, it's actually pretty simple. We just we'll create a variable here to store it, and we just call the time function like that. And then we'll echo out this the current time right here, so we can see it on this screen. And we'll load it up in our browser. And now we can see the current time is this right here. Now, I might recognize this as the current time, but you looking at it might not really recognize that at the current time. You just see a large number. You might wonder what that large number is, and that large number is the total number of seconds that have elapsed since January 1st, 1970. So that's how many seconds that have happened since January 1st, 1970, and the time that I'm recording this lecture right now. So this is the current time. Later on I'll teach you how to actually print it out so that it's more readable. Most people don't think of time in terms of how many seconds it's been since January 1st, 1970. But now that we have the current time, and that's the number of seconds that have elapsed, that's how Unix systems keep track of their time. So now that we have that time, we'll learn a couple of things that we can do with it. Now, oftentimes you don't actually want the current time, but you want maybe you want a specific time. Maybe somebody's going to enter in their birthday into your time when they register, and you want to store that time. Or they might, if they're reserving a time slot, you might want to use that time. So we need to have a way to take a normal time, or a time that a user might input, or something that you might get from an HTML form, enter it in and submit it. We need a way to convert from that into an actual time. And so there's another function called string to time. So I'll say, maybe call this a birthday, and it's a function again called string to time, and this function is actually very handy. It'll take most formats of time and convert it, or most strings, and try to convert it to a time. So if my birthday were, say, July 4th, 1984, then it should be able to convert that to a time. And then we'll go ahead and echo out the birthday time and see what happens. And now we can see that this number was lower than the current time that we had. So that means that it happened before. Now we can try different values in this string to time. We can try dates like try the same time, which is July is the 7th month, the 4th, 1984, and that's a little different format to enter in the time, but then we'll refresh this and we'll still get the same time. We can also go for July 1984. It's another format that you can enter in time, and it understood that one. Now, one thing that you can't do is go to European style times and think that, well, this is the 4th day, the 7th month, 1984. We do that and we get a time like that. So this is the way Europeans do day, month, year. It probably makes more sense because you're specific, a little less specific, and a little less specific. But Americans always put the month first, so PHP was originally designed by Americans, so I guess that's what you're stuck with. So you have to put it like that. So this is July 4th. Now we can also include an actual time here, like 12 o'clock a.m., which is early in the morning, and if you notice that's still the same time, but now we could go 12:01 a.m. and we could see that that is 60 seconds later because it's 1 minute later. Okay, so now this is assuming that the user or this string to time is very friendly because the user can type in the date the way that they see it, and then it will pretty much convert any string that it can understand into the right date. Now sometimes though the user might make an error, or you might make an error too as you try to convert a string to time. But if the user were to input the month of 13 instead of a number from 1 to 12, when that happens, the conversion fails. So it doesn't know how to interpret this state. So there's a way that we can check to see if the conversion worked or not. And that's just by including the resulting variable in an if statement. And if it worked, then it'll just echo out true. Or if it worked, this will resolve to true, and we can go ahead and proceed as normal. And then if it didn't work, then you can echo out invalid date format. So now when we refresh that, okay, so I forgot the semicolon there, and now we'll refresh it, and now we see the invalid date format. So that's a way to check. If you should probably check all user input to make sure that when you're converting it to a date, you should probably check to make sure it works. One thing that you can also do, if not birthday, this is the not symbol right here, then we can switch these two, or you can just say invalid date format and then exit your PHP script and redirect them to a different page. There's a way that you can check to make sure that your date format's right. Now let's talk about, alright, most of you users will probably, now that we can get dates, but the problem is most of you users will not want to read dates in terms of seconds since January 1st, 1970. That probably really doesn't make a lot of sense to them. So what we need it to do is a way to turn in the number of seconds, or turn the number of seconds since January 1st, 1970 into a more readable string format. And the function that we can use to do that is called the date function. I'll just echo out a date function like that. And the one thing that it needs is it needs a string right here, because there's lots of values in this string. So this is called a format string, and we're actually telling the function what information we want to abstract out of the date function. And I'm going to go ahead and echo out a line break right here so we can see it well. And so now we see that it's 16:21 right now. Now this, when we do it like this, it does the current time, but if we want it to do, say, our birthday, to turn that into a time right there, then we see that it is 14 hours right there. And that's probably because the birthday isn't in the correct format, so we'll make the birthday in the correct format. And we'll see that it's 1 minute past midnight. This is using military time. So how do we figure out what to put in this format string? Because we can abstract anything out of this date that we can possibly want to. And that's why I'd refer you to the textbook. This is the page that talks about converting to a string under the date examples. And they have this nice little table of all the characters that we can include to print out a date. Now there is this C right here. This will print out all the information that exists within your date. So if I change the format string to C, and we refresh it, and now we see 1984, July 4th, and the time is 12:01, and this right here means that we're in Hawaii time. That's the time zone. It's 10 hours behind the GMT time, which is time in London, or the Greenwich Mean Time is what they refer to it as. So that has all the information, but still that's not quite user-friendly for users. What we could do is say we want the month that we were born, and we want it all spelled out. There's a couple of things that we can do with months. First of all, a lowercase j is the day of the month with no leading zeros. Here's a short month string, so it abbreviates the month with a capital M. That's nice. Right here, F is a full month string, so it'll spell out the full month. So if we want the full month string, we can include an F, and we'll refresh, and now we get July. And now let's include the day, and the day, that is the day with no leading zeros. And a capital Y is 4 digits of the year. If we just want the last two, we can use the lowercase y, but we'll use the capital case Y. Then of course we can use the hours and minutes, but we can also put a capital AM or PM there, and then we can use a 12-hour time. So let's look up and see. A 12-hour clock time with no leading zeros is a lowercase g. So instead of an H, we can put a G right there, and we'll save this. And now we get this printed out in the format that's fairly readable and usable for users. Now just some other stuff that you can do is you can create dates relative to certain times. So maybe if we want to know what date it is going to be or what time it's going to be 2 weeks from today, we can go ahead and create another variable called 2 weeks right here, and that can be equal to a string to time. And now we could go 2 weeks, just put that in there, and if we just leave the second parameter off, then it will use the current time. So let's go ahead and echo out and line break. And then we'll go ahead, and so we can read it, we'll go ahead and use the date function, and we'll just do this C that kind of prints out everything. So now we can see the 2 weeks from today. Right there, it's 2010 right here, and 2 weeks from today will be May 7th, 2010. So that there's a nice thing that we can do. Now what if we want it to be 2 weeks from someone's birthday, and now 2 weeks from July 4th will be July 18th. Now, another way that we can change dates is we can actually add and subtract seconds. So this is 2 weeks right now stores the time from my birthday 2 weeks after my birthday. Well, maybe I want to get back to my birthday, so I can go ahead and create another variable, and I'll call this back to birthday. And that's equals 2 weeks, and then we're going to subtract is 60 seconds. So there's 60 seconds in a minute, there's 60 minutes in a hour, then there's 24 hours in a day. So this is the number, this is days, and then we can multiply that by 14 days. So 60 seconds multiplied per in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day, and there's 14 days in 2 weeks. So, and we'll just echo that, and we'll concatenate on a string to time, and we'll just go ahead and use this format right here. And instead of printing out birthday, we'll print out back to birthday. And that should show up on its own line right there. Let's go ahead and put a semicolon there. And I used the wrong function. I want to use the date function to actually get the, this is the date to a string conversion right here. And now we see we're back to my birthday. So with this, I moved it 2 weeks ahead of my birthday, and then using a little math with seconds, I was able to move it back. And there's lots more that you can do with these dates and times, but I'll just refer you to the chapter in the book to read about it. Most of the anything else that I'll teach you'll probably end up forgetting, and then you'll have to look it up in the book when you really need it. So when you start dealing with dates and times, I would recommend going to the book or searching on Google to find answers that you need.